Alright, this video is for the review of systems of equations using Elimination Week 1. If you haven't done this yet, do all 10 problems first, and then check yourself and make sure you're doing them right. So here are the answers. Pause the video, grade yourself, and then watch the video and see if you missed any, what happened. Alright, number 1. It says 3x plus 4y equals 8, and negative 3x plus 3y equals 6. Okay, so I'm going to draw some lines here. I got my x's, got my y's, and I got my numbers. So they're kind of perfect right now. They're all in the right spot. I don't have to move anything around. And even more than that, these will automatically eliminate. I have a positive 3 and I have a negative 3. So if I add those together, I will have 0 x's. Positive 3 and negative 3 are going to cancel themselves out. So if I had 3 apples and I ate 3 apples, I would have no apples. So if I had 3 x's and I took away 3 x's, I have no x's. So I'm not going to have any x's left. But I will have y's. 3 plus 4 is 7, and 8 plus 6 is 14. So now I'm just going to divide by 7 on both sides, and I get that y equals 2. Now that we have one of the answers, we're halfway done. We have part of our coordinate point. We know the second number is 2, but we don't know what the first number is. We don't know what the x value is yet. So I'm going to pick one of the two equations, and it doesn't matter which one I pick. I'm just going to pick the first one because it looks easier. There's no negatives. So I'm going to rewrite the first equation. But instead of putting a y, I'm going to put a 2. So right here, as if I could just scratch it out and put a 2 there, that's what I'm going to do. So 3x plus 4 times 2 equals 8. And again, what I've done is, because y equals 2, I can just take the y out here and put a 2 in its place because they're equal. But it's not 42. Sometimes kids will say, well, it's 4 2, so it's 42. That's not true. It's 4 times 2 because 4y is 4 times y. So I really get 3x plus 8 equals 8. And now I just need to solve this two-step equation. And this one's actually going to work out. I'm going to subtract the 8, and it's going to give me a 0. So I'm going to get 3x equals 0, which is fine. And then I divide by 3, and x is going to equal 0. I can divide by a number here, as the top can be 0, but the bottom cannot be. So as long as your top number is a 0, you're fine. But if it were the other way around, if it was 3 divided by 0, then it would be undefined. But that's not what happened. This one's okay, and so it's just going to be a 0. So that did not happen. So x is 0, and y is 2. So I'm going to come back up, and I'm going to put my 0 in the coordinate point, which is 0, 2, which is D. All right, let's do number 2. I have 6x plus 3y equals 6. And then I have negative x minus 3y equals 4. Okay, so I'm going to draw my lines. I really have, 6 and a negative 1. Don't forget there's a 1 there. So I have 6x and negative 1x. I have positive 3y and negative 3y. And then I have 6 and 4. Well, this time my y's are going to cancel. And I'm going to be left with 6 minus 1, which is 5, and then 6 plus 4, which is 10. We're always adding, So even if I added the 6 plus the -1, I'm still going to get 5. So technically you are always adding. And then we divide by 5, and I get that x is 2. So this time we know our first number first, and now we're looking for the y value. And I'm going to use the top equation again. It looks easier this time as well. So I'm going to rewrite it. 6x plus 3y equals 6. And don't forget that x is 2. That's what we figured out. So I'm going to, instead of putting in x here, I'm going to put a 2. And I get 12. 6 times 2 is 12. Plus 3y equals 6. And then I subtract 12. And I get 6 minus 12, which is -6. And then I have to divide by 3. And y equals -2. So there's my other point. Y is -2 and x is +2. So that's interesting. They're both a version of 2. So 2, -2. That's where they would intersect if we graphed them, and that's their solution. Okay, number 3. I'm using about a page of problem here. We're burning through paper. And then I have 6x minus 3y equals 15. Okay, I'm going to draw my lines here. Well, I just lost it. Okay. So notice I have 1y and a -3y. Then I have -6x and a +6x and a -13 and a +15. So when I add these two, we're always adding. When I add these two, they're going to go to 0x, which is going to eliminate, hence the term elimination. Then I have a +1 plus -3, which is -2. So I have -2y equals, then I have -13 plus 15. I get +2. So right now I have -2y equals 2. And then I'm going to divide by -2 on both sides. And y is going to equal -1. So we know our y point or coordinate. Now we're going to use that and plug it back in. And this time, I think the second equation looks easier. Let's use that. So 6x minus 3y equals 15. So instead of y, we're going to put a -1 in. 6x minus 3 times -1 equals 15. Oops, I can't see that. Okay, so instead of putting a y, I put a -1. So 6x, -3 times +1, -3 times -1 is a +3. So let me say that again. -3 times -1 is a +3. And you can check that in your calculator. Now we're down to a two-step equation. So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. Oops, not 13. And I get 6x equals 12. Then I divide by 6. And I get that x equals 2. So x equals 2. Y equals -1. So I'm going to come back up, put that in my point. So my point is 2, -1, which is A. Okay. Number 4. I got negative x minus y equals 5. And then I have x plus 3y equals negative 3. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is put my 1's in. Then I'm going to draw my lines. If you can see this. Okay. Now I'm going to add up. Well, I'm going to look at it first. If I add it right now, the 1's will cancel. I have a negative 1 and a positive 1, so my x's will eliminate. Then I have negative 1 plus positive 3, which is going to give me a positive 2y. Then I have 5 plus negative 3, which is going to give me a positive 2. Then I divide by 2, both sides, and I get that y equals 1. So there's where we are. Y equals 1. I'm going to look at the equations, and it looks like the second one is probably easier, so I'm going to plug it back into that one. Alright, so I've written my second equation, and then instead of putting a y, I'm going to put a 1. And then 3 times 1 is 3, so I'm really going to get x plus 3 equals negative 3. Now I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. And negative 3 minus 3 is negative 6. So x is negative 6, which is answer D. Okay, let's keep moving. I think I'm going to start this one down here. I have a little bit more room than usual. So number 5, I have 4x plus 2y equals 18. Then I have negative 4x minus 6y equals negative 6. And I'm going to draw my columns. Positive 4 and negative 4 are going to cancel out. Then I'm going to have positive 2 and negative 6, which is going to give me negative 4y. And then 18 plus negative 6 is the same thing as 18 minus 6, which is going to give me 12. Now I need to divide by negative 4 on both sides. And I get that y equals negative 3. So far, so good. I'm going to look, and it looks like the top equation was the easier one. So I'm going to use that one. So instead of writing a y, I'm going to put a negative 3. Well, 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. So I get 4x minus 6 equals 18. I'm going to rewrite that over here where I have more room. But if you have room, you're fine. So I'm going to add 6. 18 plus 6 is 24. And then I divide by 4. And x equals 6. Which is D. All right, number 6. All right, I got 2x plus y equals negative 3. Then I have negative 2x plus 3y equals 7. Okay. And if I added my columns right now, these 2's would cancel. And so my x's would eliminate. Then I have a 1 here. Let's not forget to put that in. So So I have a 1y plus 3 y's. Well, 1 apple plus 3 apples is 4 apples. So I got 4y. Then I have negative 3 plus 7, which is positive 4. And then I divide by 4. And I get that y equals 1. So my second, my xy, y is 1, and we still have to find out what x is. Looking at the equations, it looks like the top one's easier, so I'm going to use that. I always try to make it easier on myself. There's no reason to work harder than you have to. Okay, so instead of putting a y, I'm going to put a 1. Notice that nothing else changes except for this. And that's because y equals 1. So now I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides, and I get that 2x equals negative 4. Then I'm going to divide by 2 on both sides, and I get that x equals negative 2. Oh. So x equals negative 2. So the coordinate point is negative 2, 1, which is A. So if you didn't catch that, we subtracted 1, we divided by 2, and we got x is negative 2. So, all right, number 7. I have negative x minus 2y equals negative 11. Then I have negative 2x plus 2y equals negative 4. And I'm going to separate my columns. If I add it right now, the y's will cancel. Negative 2 and positive 2 will go to nothing. And then I'll be left with negative 1x plus negative 2x, which is going to give me negative 3x. And then negative 11 plus negative 4 is negative 15. Then I divide by negative 3. And negative 15 divided by negative 3 is positive 5. So far we know that the first coordinate is 5. Now let's look at them. They both look a little messy. I don't think it much matters this time. I think I'm going to choose the second one. Negative 2x plus 2y equals negative 4. And it doesn't matter which one you pick, but I'm just choosing the second one. So instead of writing an x here, I'm going to write a 5. And then negative 2 times 5 is negative 10. And then I'm going to add 10 to both sides. Minus 4 is 6. Then if I divide both sides by 2, I get that y equals 3. So the second coordinate point is 3. So it's 5, 3, which is A. All right. Number 8. I got 3x plus 3y equals negative 12. Then I have negative 3x plus 5y equals negative 12. And obviously, I'm just going to draw my lines in this. My x's are going to cancel. And I'm going to get 8y. 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 Then if I divide by 8, I'm going to get that y equals -3. So the second coordinate point is y equals -3. And, oops, did not mean to write that yet. I have to pick which equation I want. I'm going to pick the top one, it looks easiest. And instead of putting a y, I'm going to put a -3. So 3 times -3 is -9. And then if I add 9 to both sides, -12 plus 9 is -3. And then we divide by 3. And -3 divided by +3 is a -1. So we have our two solutions. X is -1 and y is -3, which is B. Okay, we're on number 9. We have 2x minus 2y, and that equals -12. And then we have -x plus 2y equals 7. Well, if I add it right now, my y's will cancel out, and I'll be left with 2 plus -1. Well, 2 plus -1 is +1 equals -5. Well, I don't really need to write the 1 because technically there's always a 1. So I can just rewrite it as without the 1, which is x equals -5. So we have our first solution. X equals -5. And now we need to find out what the y is. It looks like the top one might be an easier. Nah, I'll take the second one. Okay, so -x plus 2y equals 7. Well, if x is -5, I negative -5, because I already have a negative here. Then I have my x is -5 plus 2y equals 7. Well, anytime that you have negatives side by side like that, they cancel each other out. So I really have +5. So I really have 2y plus 5 equals 7. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. And I get that 2y equals 2. Then I'm going to divide by 2 on both sides. And I get that y is 1. So my coordinate point is -5, +1, which is D. All right, we're on our last problem. Uh, 2x minus 4y equals 2. And then we have -2x minus y equals -12. If I add these two, they're going to cancel out. And I got -4 and -1, which is going to give me -5. And then I have +2 and -12, which is going to give me -10. Now I divide by -5 on both sides. And -10 divided by -5 is +2. So our y coordinate is 2. Looking at the two equations, I'm thinking maybe the top one's easier. I think I'm going to plug it into that one. So 2x minus 4y equals 2. Instead of writing y, I'm going to write a 2. So 2x minus 4 times 2 equals 2. Don't forget it's 4 times 2, so that's 2x minus 8 equals 2. Now I'm going to add 8, and I get that 2x equals 10. Divide by 2 on both sides. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So x is 5 and y is 2. So my coordinate point is 5, 2, which is A. If you got all those right, you should be ready for your test. If you did not, and you still don't understand, you really need to ask me for help. I will come to you and you can ask me anything and I'll answer anything.